You're with Late Lunch this Halloween afternoon, and I'm delighted to be joined again on the show by Father David Jones. He's a hermit monk who lives in the northeast. David, you're very welcome to the show again. Good to see you.
Thanks, Gerry, and yourself.
May I begin by asking you about this time, Halloween. What a fantastic time it is for children. Ghosts and ghouls, spirits and witches. It's a bit of fun, but you have a slightly different take on this.
Yeah, well, you see, there's more to it than meets the eye. If it were just a bit of fun, but the thing is that the fun is, unfortunately, celebrating the dark side, and that's the spooky bit, because people aren't aware that actually all that's behind it is not just neutral.
And what do you mean by the dark side? What are you getting at?
Well, what's happening basically is that we're revamping something which is pagan, which is Celtic, the Samhain festal season of getting back the light. You see, All Saints has recuperated all that in the Christian atmosphere, but unfortunately the old thing is coming back. We think that the celebration of All Saints on the 1st of November was in some way a way of getting back what had been for donkey's years in the hands of the other side, when towards that time, when in the Celtic period, remember, that would be the beginning of the year again, or the sort of heading for the solstice. And therefore it was a time when the spirit world was thought to be closest to this world, when the frontier was very, very thin between this world and the next and all that goes with it. But then, you see, because of the dark side, you know the story of the Druids, they were very much involved with power, but they were getting it from the dark side, and that's why people were afraid of them. They had power, and involving also power over life and death, because the other side delights in sacrifice, and that involved human sacrifice. There was a lot of it going on at that time of year, and so that's the dark side that people don't realise is being recuperated now subtly through this.
So the dark side you're referring to really is Satan and his works, yes?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Samhain there, the Celtic festival, and this time of year it's the window to winter, darkness, death, rebirth, stillness as well. Is that pagan? Is that anti-Christian?
Well, it's life. You see, basically we've not come from the moon, we've come from whatever brought us here. We've inherited life, and it's a long, long time before we get on track, and therefore this backlog is still there. Now, we must remember that the whole victory of Christian light and grace over this was it was getting over this question of having to have blood, having to have demonic forces, being oppressed by things above oneself. If you compare now the desperate atmosphere around Stonehenge or near here in Newgrange, some kind of insurance policy against the dark, well, that is all obliterated by the explosion of the resurrection. So now to go back to that, one is questioning why.
And do you believe that, Halloween when I was growing up as a child was quite simple. We dressed up, we went round the doors, we sang, we got a few coppers for ourselves, we maybe lit a fire, we celebrated with food. Today you now have a massive Halloween festival that is unrecognisable from even my childhood, David, what it was, with all that's involved. Do you believe that there are sinister forces behind this whole commercialisation, this whole drive of Halloween?
Indeed. Because, as you're saying, when I was young, it was innocent. Because I remember actually when I was living as a student in the seminary, because I was doing classes, I was living in a seminary, and it was in the hands of Carmelites, and the prior for Halloween would, with the rest of them, go on his knees and try to get these apples from the bowl. It was a bit of fun. But people don't realise actually that that's reproducing in a toned down way the ancient Celtic thing. Do you know what they used to do with these apples? It goes right back. Apparently what it was this. They would go around, these being sent by the Druids to houses or the equivalent thereof in these ancient times, and they would give them a choice. Either they would give them what we would call a treat, or the other. So if they got what they wanted, it was actually a human being, preferably a child, preferably a slave, but if it wasn't available, they would give one of their own away, and that would be carted off then to the place of eventual ritual sacrifice. And the only way that they could get out of it was to get out of this solution of mead, some kind of apple juice or whatever it was. It was something which is actually boiling at a very high temperature at its boiling point of 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And this particular liquid, if you had to put your face to it, already the fumes coming from that would start to destroy your skin, would make you eventually deaf, would damage your throat permanently, make you blind or partially. And it was pretty difficult under those conditions to get your teeth or anything near these apples. And if you got one, you might get away sort of half alive. Otherwise, you were one of the victims. And though they were honouring their gods, as it were, it was actually a sacrifice ultimately, without their knowing it, to Satan, because God doesn't want it. So these were being put inside this massive wicker man, and they would be burnt essentially to death. And so that was happening quite a lot, not just on this as the major feast, but happened other times as well, about 8 times a year apparently. So this, and if they didn't give what they wanted, they would put this dark spell sign over it. It's the circle encircling a 6-corner star. And that will be an invitation then to get a curse from the other side and do all kinds of harm upon that family. And therefore, that's the old origin of the trick and treat that we have now, and these apples.
So you believe that the trick and treat of today is, in a way, subtly bringing this back into life as we know it today in the 21st century. You mentioned there about sacrifices. Sacrifices, human sacrifices today, a thing of the past.
Well, that's what we thought, but apparently it's not as... Unfortunately, they're coming back, and they've been there for quite a while, but it's now coming more to the surface. You know why? Because there's an alternative source of information. Before we were fed by the official sources. Now, with the media, we know far more. So anyone out there can actually Google some very good YouTubes. For instance, the testimony of the ex-Satanist Glenn Hobbs, who's been there and knows what he's talking about. He was born into a caste of high priests, and his ritually espoused wife, a tiny little girl there, was sacrificed on this night. And then you've got the likes of Fiona Barnett, who is a witness to what happened. I think it's in Australia. The accent is Australian. VIPs were in this thing, and she goes graphically to what was all going on. It was quite a big human sacrifice. Lots of children involved, beheaded, and it's awful. I mean, the details are kind of startling, but it's all there. And you've got others likewise. Quite a plethora. If you go into the same section, lots and lots of them all come up, and they all say basically the same thing. Yes, it's going on, and more than we think.
That's horrendous to contemplate that even today. It's shocking. And is this not something that the law of the land or the forces of is this not something that governments and the law of the land are pursuing?
Yeah, one would hope that these would have that effect, but apparently, and this is quite upsetting, it seems that they're being protected. Therefore, there's corruption somewhere.
Nothing new in this world today, David. Corruption, a massive word the world over. Now, you mentioned Tara and Newgrange there and satanic worship. You know, millions of people come to see these places. You know, let me say that again. Hundreds of thousands of people come to Tara and Newgrange every year to see what's there. They're not really worshipping. Is there something else goes on at these places that we don't hear about?
Well, we know that they love these new Druids and Celts to get hold of these places and recuperate them. I remember visiting a long time ago now the inside of Loch Rue, and there we had the key from the person who has the custody of it, and we could see quite clearly once you go inside there were new chiseling marks of Satanic, basically symbols. We know that what's going on here, and we know that it goes on the same sort of thing in all the ancient posts. In fact, I met somebody not long ago, a druid. He called himself a druid at Tara. So, and they've got a place where they chant away down the bottom there. So they do recuperate these places.
So that is going on today at this time. You talk about let's talk for a moment about the consecration of hosts in the tabernacle, which is central to the Christian belief and message as well. There are things happening there that you know about that are really not good. Tell us about those.
Yeah, well, we know that they have to have every month a certain number of consecrated hosts, and the demon knows which they are. You can't fool him. And they have deadlines, and we know the sort of thing that goes on with them in these dark rites. They're trampled underfoot, insulted, but they're desecrated in foul ways, like from what I can make out, they get this naked woman and they put them in the secret parts, that kind of thing. It's completely sacrilegious, deliberately, as maximally so as possible. And therefore they're deliberately attacking the sacred. And also we know more now because of closed circuit television and this kind of thing, that people are going into churches, they're performing static rites when no one is there, and they always want the host. And the carelessness of sacristans and even parish priests of having the key around and people can guess where it might be doesn't help. And also the fact that now Holy Communion is given in the hand quite often means it's far easier to get them. So the price of consecrated hosts on the black market has gone down. It used to be more difficult to get them. Now they're easily available, and they can use anyone, children or whatever, to get them. And therefore they're dissipating all the time.
The worship of the devil, let me say that again. Worship of the devil, is this basically what you're saying to me? That there are people out there who are in league with Satan?
You see, the thing is that it's a real force, and the advantage of being in league with that side is that he answers immediately. He will give you immediately what you want on condition of your giving your soul to him. So that's the pact. And the success of certain pop stars, of certain celebrities, is ascribable to this pact. And also, if you compare a magician with just a conjurer, you see a big difference there. A conjurer is a clever man who's learned very well his tricks. Even St. John Bosco was a good conjurer for his kids. But you look at a magician, now the word magus, it's a Greek word, magos, it's somebody who's given, basically he's got powers from the other side, and he can do things which aren't able to be done by man. I mean, they are magic. So therefore, that's what's happening. Now, do you know the so-called Church of Satan, founded by Anton LaVey? It was founded in I think somewhere around the other side, California, of America, way back in as early as probably the 70s, if not earlier, the 60s. And he's died now, but it was something which took off, and he was overtly satanic, and he was the high priest of it. And what happened is quite interesting, because at the end of his life, something happened. He was dying, and an eyewitness who was with him when he was dying, just before he shut his eyes in death, said this. He started to see things, and he cried out, "Oh my, there's something wrong. There's something dreadfully, dreadfully wrong." And he died.
So you believe then that he saw the light at his death?
He saw the wrong light. He saw he was going.
He's going to the wrong place.
Yeah.
So if you live this life and you pursue this worship, you are destined for eternity with the devil.
It's the pact that he makes. It's his pound of flesh. You know the play, The Damnation of Faust? Well, you've got this famous one-liner. The devil is coming for his pound of flesh there because he made this pact with the demon. And he's there in desperation because he's got the faith. And he's crying out, "One small drop of this precious blood would be enough." Eventually, he expires, and one hears cries.
It's thought-provoking and frightening at the same time, to be honest with you, what you speak about. You compared the magician to the conjurer. What about something like Reiki? Now, I know you've spoken about this before. Are you a fan of Reiki?
Well, no, you see, basically, the desire to heal by all possible energies, which is in itself a good motive, is out there, and people who are engaged in these alternative therapies have usually a good will. They're not aware that actually the means that they're using is not safe, because there is a progression towards the initiation of a Reiki master, and one of them is actually directly an opening of the channels, the chakras, and all that's in them to the powers that are out there, which therefore may not be all good. And that's the problem, because they are real powers and they work because they're real powers, but they work for a while, and again wanting their pound of flesh, because actually the dark side can also heal to get their effect. They can also make ill and give apparent healing of what they've caused. But the energy's coming in there, they're invoking spirits. But remember now, we've either got good spirits or bad spirits, or sort of indifferent spirits. You've got human spirits, for they are what they are. But then you've got the other side. An angel is good or fallen, but they can be invoking what they don't know. The fallen angels are demons, and they can be in there, because we priests have to pick up the pieces. And Reiki, unfortunately, is one of the worst ones.
let's talk for a moment before we finish up about this thing of ghosts and ghouls and spirits. And you mentioned several types of spirits there. A human spirit, good spirits, evil spirits. You obviously break them down, and there are differences. Have you come across places that are, inhabited by a very evil spirit?
Oh, big time. Oh yeah, no. In fact, I'm tempted to put on the yellow pages, Jones and Company, Ghostbusters, because people come to me on the phone, all kind of the things are happening in this place, get them sorted out. So the only way to sort it out seriously is actually to celebrate the sacred mysteries on the spot and exorcise the place and clean it up. And if it's powerful, you might have to go more than once. But the older the house is, the more danger there is. I know houses which are really badly haunted, some of them. And you see, you mentioned the nature of the spirits. I know a case not far from here, actually, where the person died in a serious road accident to which he was not prepared, and he just died like that presumably in sin. And so anyway, ever since then, the house that had belonged to him is completely haunted, and it's quite malignant. You can't live there. This spirit tears up things and is a bit of a nuisance. So that's serious malignant infestation or haunting. You've got other things where you've got benign spirits who go around and kind of they appear now and again. See, what it is, they're stuck somewhere. We hope that if they're stuck and if they're coming back for help, we can help them. But if they're malign spirits, that's nasty. What's going on there?
And can you go into a house and help clear a spirit from the house?
Oh yeah, you see, only a priest can do it, and that's why one day I was going past not far from here actually, and a garage owner came. Just the man you want, keep all his tools on. Just the man we want. We got a problem. Can you sort it out? So even on the closed circuit television in the place, it was all coming out. Objects moving. Apparently somebody died. So anyway, sorted out. So I went and celebrated secretly after their work when there was no one was there, and we cleared it up a bit. But it's calmed down a bit. But it's not malign, but it's a nuisance. The objects are still moving around. You see, there's not a rest.
And do you come into contact with the spirit? You say you celebrate a mass there.
Yeah.
Is that all it takes? Or do you encounter this spirit head on? Do you encounter it?
Oh, well, when you go, they're usually kind of around, but you wouldn't actually meet them. It's just the effects you get from it. If it's serious, it has to happen more than once. Usually, actually, it pretty well does have an effect. That's my experience. It does calm down quite a lot after Holy Mass, yes. But to answer your question, I wouldn't have direct contact like that with the people involved. I would have a lot. Oh, yeah.
Yes, so you are sort of the conduit between them and these spirits, and what you do then calms the situation. Yeah. There are good spirits. You say that a moment ago. Yeah. There are human spirits and good spirits.
Well, the people who seem to be on side. I know of one case, for instance. You can actually see it on YouTube. It's a fascinating case. This thief comes into a house with all his gear, and then he's having a good time raiding this wherever he is, and then suddenly you see, and the camera can see things as they are. You can just about see this faint outline, and then this other chap, the thief, suddenly turns around and starts to address him. And he won't go away, and he gets out his gun, and you can see this gun shooting at the spirit, and then he's frightened to death, so he puts everything back in the cupboard, goes like a dog with his tail between his legs, and closes the door. So it was a benign ghost.
Interesting that you tell that story as well. So your message today, Father David, on Halloween Day, what do you say to listeners today? There are people heading out this evening to trick and treat, to enjoy Halloween, to celebrate it at home. Do you have a final cautionary message?
Yeah, well, if I were a parent, I'd always be kind and helpful to children because you don't want them to get upset about things, or also sometimes you don't want to pull them out of things which can be neutral. But the thing is, it would be good if you're a Christian parent, I say, to have a quiet word in their ear. Look, there's more going on here than meets the eye, because actually if one compares this feast with Christmas now has to be just a good holiday, and you mustn't put Christ into it, whereas this one is explicitly now sort of evil. I mean, satanic, it's the ugly, it's the macabre. So a word from the parents to a mature child wouldn't do any harm. That just be aware that there actually is more going on here. It's being pushed by a dark source who wants to be honoured.
Father David Jones, thank you once again for joining me on Late Lunch this afternoon. I always enjoy your company and appreciate your visit to us today. Thank you.
God
bless you.
Thanks.